جواد.
طيب, take it from online. Nothing? طيب, تفضل, نبيل.
With regards to the hadith mentioned, like, whoever commits a sin and will have like the curse of Allah on everybody.
Say that one more time.
With regards to the saying in the hadith that whoever commits a sin in Medina, like, will have the curse of Allah and malaika and everything. So would that be also related to like somebody committing a personal sin? Like if I sin in Medina, would it be considered a greater sin than anywhere else? Would I have greater
طيب, hadith من أحدث فيها حدثا, right? أو آوى محدثا. There are two main interpretations of the ulama of Islam. أحدث يعني يعني a person making bid'ah, ibtidah. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا محدثاتها, creating, making an innovation, calling to it, propagating it. And the second interpretation, hadath, ahdath, ihdath, meaning making a munkar. It doesn't just mean any sin, such as murder. It's not the same as a personal sin that you're hiding and fighting. Making something munkar, open, public, disregarding Medina, right? Wallahu a'lam. Fadl.
Were there like you know the five like or the four like shuyukh of fiqh, like like did any of them follow other madhahib?
Did any of the al-Arba'a, the four imams, follow another madhab? Of course not. Rather, for real, if I'm going to be honest, brutally honest, they didn't have a madhab as it happened later on. They learned, they studied, they taught. They were asked questions, they answered questions, they wrote books, etc. And their students formulated, put together, synthesized, sifted through, organized, arranged, compiled, sophisticated the madhab. But you look at many of the imams, you'll find them clearly warning from them being followed, and warning from writing down their statements, and warning the people from following them blindly or with just, I will take your proof. Don't follow us, period. Follow the khulub and hayth al-khabna, let alone fanatics, muta'assibin, zealots, extremists, who put one imam on a pedestal and disregard all other imams and turn a blind eye from all other imams, as if they just take from one sahabi. He's the only hadith I'll take from the Prophet, Abu Hurairah, that's it. That's the similitude of that. So how the imams lived, what they did, is very different than what many of their followers have done and are doing to this very day, let alone follow someone else. So those four imams, they were mujtahidun. But for argument's sake, when you read about the fiqh of the Salaf, you'll find that those imams following and adopting the madhahib of the tabi'een. That's a fact. Imam Malik, obvious, Abu Medina. Abu Hanifa, no doubt about that. Did he see the Sahaba? Was he a tabi'i or not? He was from the earliest of the four imams. And you read the lineage and the pedigree of Abu Hanifa, going back to the disciples of Abdullah bin Mas'ud, in Kufa, Imam Ahmed, that's clear as day, I thought of the Salaf, right? So on and so forth. So they would adopt views that in most cases were taken by the Salaf al-Salih, the Tabi'een, right? Now, whether they followed them, just followed them, or whether they agreed with them. But this was the same view of Hassan Basri. This was the same view of Ibrahim Nakhai. This was the same view of Alqam. This was the same view of this Tabi'i, and this Mukhadram, let alone this Sahaba, Ali radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, etc. Everyone understand this? And that's a very, very needed and interesting field of study, which is Tarikh al-Tashri'. Tarikh al-Tashri', the evolution of fiqh, and the history of the madhahib and of the imams, and ijtihad and taqleed. So in our culture, we have tadween al-sunnah, ilm al-rijal, and in the fiqh culture they have tarikh tashri'. And it's very, very needed and very interesting just to study it. And it allows no doubt, it can help you with the dawah confusion. Abu Hanifa, the greatest imam. Abu Hanifa, not even an imam. Imam Malik, the greatest imam. Imam Malik, an innovator. Hanbali madhab, the greatest madhab. Hanbali madhab, bid'ah. Extremes on both sides. So you read and you study, how did Abu Hanifa become Abu Hanifa? Where did he learn from? What's his sanad? Who did he take from? Malik. What was Ahlul Medina? Who was Ahlul Medina, right? It also goes to show you the importance of the Salaf as-Salih and the contradiction and the hypocrisy of people who claim those imams, take from those imams, fanatically, blindly follow those imams, but don't want to have anything to do with the Salaf. That's picking and choosing and cherry picking. Doesn't work like that. Let alone those who are ignorant. The way of the Salaf is made up. It's something that came from Saudi Arabia. It's Wahhabi. Okay, sure. You call yourself Maliki, huh? It's true for Salaf and the Malik. So knowledge, history, reading how things became, how things started, how things evolved. You'll find the answer to this and many, many other things when you read these and you take that course. And I would advise you and anyone else to take those courses and to read the books that are available, right? And what separates the madhabs, what makes one like this and what makes one like that. Extremely important. Allahu A'lam.
Question online. Initials QB, London, UK. Can I make that dua for protection from those 8 diseases at the end of Salah during Tashahhud?
With regards to making dua in the tashahhud from those 8 diseases, then you're going to make any dua that you please from the good of this world and the hereafter. Period. And FYI, one of the best times, one of the best places to make dua is before the end of the salah. And that's one of the interpretations of dubura kulli salah. Dubura salah. At the end of the prayer, meaning before you salam out or after you salam out. And this also proves the innovation of making a systematic congregational dua at the end of every prayer, as many masjids stubbornly do. As soon as the imam salams out, you make a dua every single time formally. One of the best places that, just let's make a bet. Ask that imam to study, we know where, right? Ask that layman person, why do you make dua like that every single time after the salam? Oh, well, the imam does it, or it's a good thing, or Allah's not going to punish me for making dua. I ask them, when is it sunnah time to make dua with regards to the prayer? I guarantee 9 out of 10 of them never even heard or don't even know that is clear proof stating that it's the sunnah to make dua before the end of the taslim at the end of the tashahhud. And in most cases, wallahu alam, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, they're not making the recommended sunnah du'as before the taslim. And that is what bid'ah does. It moves the sunnah out the way. And it prevents people from learning the sunnah and practicing the sunnah. And as far as the brothers who are learned, who did study overseas, in this country or that country, or they have an ijazah or ijazat, they wear this type of hat from this university, and they look down upon everyone else, it's a fact. Arrogance and scholarship is a big problem. And the Salaf, they spoke about it. Arrogant scholars, looking down upon people, scorning people. I graduated from Medina, so therefore everyone else is beneath me and under me. I have ijazah in this, I memorized that, I studied that. I wear this type of hat with this type of color, so therefore you know nothing. Your tajweed is what? Nothing. And mushkil, it's a problem. It's a big problem in Islamic scholarship that we suffer from. May Allah protect us all. You ask him, yes, Sheikh, why does your congregation do this each and every single time? You yourself, you have ijazah in Sahih Bukhari. The Prophet clearly said this. In Sahih Muslim, oh, well, you know, the people there, they won't understand. Oh, it's too difficult, or it's above their heads. Yeah, just teach the Sunnah. Read to them the hadith of the Prophet. Why are you hiding it from them? It's a big problem. Wallahu a'lam.
I miss Dallas, Texas. Is it a duty for an older brother to give money to his little sisters?
Is it a duty for an older brother to give money to his little sisters? Not necessarily, unless he's their breadwinner. If he's their benefactor, they're his beneficiaries, he looks after them, then yes. Or there's no one else that gives them the necessary nafaqah, then yes. As far as if they have a mother and father or a mother or whatever, then no. Wallahu a'lam.
Hey, I'm from Schenectady, New York. You worry about so many people. How are you doing?
Barakallahu feekum. I'm well. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair.
QB, London, UK. Is there anything wrong in preferring to have more sons or daughters?
Is there anything wrong for preferring having more sons over more daughters? Yes and no. Or no and yes. The no part is, you have a preference. And there's nothing wrong with having a preference. But the preference has a precedent. And in most cases, people have preferences with prejudices and precedents, right? I want more sons because I don't like girls. And whose way is it, whose sunnah is it to dislike girls and look down upon girls? We all know who. And if you just look how Shaitan tricks people, right? Like, you have a son, you have sons. Who said your sons are going to reach maturity? Who said your sons are going to be big and tough and tall and strong? Who said your sons are going to be warriors and conquerors and leaders? Who said that? Who said your sons are going to remain Muslim? Who said your sons are going to be dutiful and respectful? And in most cases, if you look in history of all of the great khans and conquerors and sultans, 9 out of 10 times, when he had several sons, the empires were torn apart afterwards. So for the sovereign to have multiple sons was just as a curse, just as much as a curse as was having no heir to the throne. It's a fact. If you read history, they split up with the father, they destroyed what the father spent his whole lifetime to build. 50 years, we fought and died to make this empire, and these ungrateful half-wits come and have civil wars for the next 20 years and destroy my whole legacy. So just because you have a son, it doesn't mean what? Anything. It's not guaranteed anything, right? Let alone the fact that Allah could test you with a son who turns into a homosexual. Why do you ever do that? Or a son who leaves Islam. Or a son who's a drunkard, a drug addict. Right? A son who's a womanizer, etc., etc., etc. So you make dua for Allah to give you good children, strong children, blessed children. Boys, what? Or girls. Wallahu.
BY Running UK. Does someone follow Sheikh Al-Albani or follow traditional school of thought? Jazakallahu khairan.
Should someone follow Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, or traditional school of thought? In general, the layman should learn the basics, the fundamental ABCs. And most of the fundamental ABCs are agreed upon. Most of them. As far as when or if and when something pops up, something happens, something new, something you understand, ask the people of knowledge, whoever those people of knowledge are. Wallahu ta'ala.
Hey, Toronto, Ontario, Saddam Shia. Are there any hadith that mention sudden death, i.e. heart attacks, dying in your sleep, or a car accident, etc.? What did the Prophet say about, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say about sudden death?
A sudden death? There is no doubt. This general concept of sudden death in the Quran and Sunnah. Not being prepared, not knowing when you're going to die. Death coming to you unexpectedly. These people, they didn't believe that it would come to them. They didn't think that it would come to them. Right? The angels come to them, our messengers, etc. That's in general. What's important is you prepare for death. Whether it's sudden or whether it is seen. You prepare for death. You don't know when you're going to die. فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. That's in general, in brief. Allahu A'lam.
Can we consider Jafar as-Sadiq part of the Fantastic Four or the 49?
أئمة الأربعة كيف يعني؟
Huh?
4 imams, what you mean Fantastic Four?
Like,
Fiqh or
yeah.
يعني المهم, the 4 imams is, I would say, is generally accepted. It's general consensus. They are the Fantastic Four of the traditional follow schools of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But the problem with that term is the Imams before, during, or after their times, like Kutub al-Sitta. There are no other books besides Kutub al-Sitta. There are no other ulama who wrote books of hadith before, during, and what? After. So in general, no. But did he have a madhab? Did he have atba'? Did he have students and disciples? Was he mujtahid, etc.? You can't just restrict that to what? 4 men. That's absurd. Out of all of those Imam who lived and died, there are only what? 4 leaders from among them. That's absurd. Wallahu a'lam. Fadal.
What's your opinion on Al-Ghazali?
What's my opinion on Ghazali? Well, in general, we don't answer questions or entertain questions that pertain to specific personalities. But obviously, Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, is past, and perhaps with some importance or benefit that can be taken therefrom. My position on Al-Ghazali, inshallah ta'ala, is a balanced position. Al-Ghazali, no doubt about it, he benefited the Muslims. He served the deen. He left a legacy. Was he the only scholar? No. Was he the greatest scholar? No. Do we fanatically follow him? No. Do we put him on a pedestal above all other scholars? No. Do we curse him and slander him? No. Do we speak ill of him, think negatively of him? Of course not. Balanced in the middle. He did well. He served. He benefited. We learned from his books. And there are other things, like any other imam, in which he erred in. He was wrong. Whether it was a mistake or a flaw. 2 different things now. A mistake just being a mistake, and a flaw being a systematic flaw. There's something wrong with your system, your method, your aqidah, your methodology, whatever. Versus the system is sound, but أخطأ في كذا وهم في كذا لم يوفق في كذا. I would understand this. So that's my position on Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, is not to slander him, nor to go extreme. Right? As far as the different Islamic groups and how they use Imam Ghazali as the ultimate supreme champion, above and beyond and before all other ulama, then that's something la aqtadihi ana. I'm not pleased with that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Tafadhal.
One chance regarding what you just read, in which it says like, or takes a master, and like any different master will have like such and such consequences. What does that mean?
We didn't explain that, but we've explained those hadiths in Kitab al-Iman. And that pertains to manumission. There's a slave, he's given his or her freedom, and then he takes on the lineage, the name, the description, the affiliation of someone who did not manumit him. Everyone understand this? That is haram, and according to the hadith, is a major sin and means of curse. And there's obvious reasons. It's disrespect and it's major ungratefulness. And no doubt about that if you think how that applies to teacher and student, huh? Muhammad bin what? He showed me, he didn't teach me anything. He showed me this book. He helped me with this. Weren't you sitting with him? Didn't you study with him? Weren't you a student of Mufti? Weren't you following him? Weren't you in the videos? Who's Mufti? And you find subhanAllah, from the strangest things. I don't want to call the brother Mufti. He's not a Mufti. No problem. But when a person sits there, they says, you going to Mufti's class? And the brother says, who's Mufti? Who's that? You're not Mufti. Who's that? You mean Muhammad over there? Like, bro. Keep it real with yourself. So a person receiving something from someone, they were blessed by someone, they were handed something from someone, and then they turn to what? Someone else. There's a problem. I don't know what help us all, right? May the curse of Allah, huh? Maybe be protected from that. I mean, Father.
Is it possible, or how common is it for somebody who has more of something to have hasad for somebody who has less of it? Let's say with like knowledge. Somebody has like a lot of knowledge.
Al-Fadil yahsul al-mafdul. That's very common in history. You ask yourself, what is wrong with you? You're the teacher, you're the leader, you're the king. Why are you jealous of this person? Human being. The human being, everything about the human being cannot be explained mathematically. It makes no sense. This woman, you're 10 times in a better position than this woman. You're jealous of her. You're insecure over this. Human being. Let alone the fact that just because you think that you have a status over someone, there may be something that, I graduated from Medina, but you're twice younger than me, sharper than me, faster than me, more talented than I am. So even though I graduated 10, 20 years before you, it doesn't mean that I'm what? And when those people say, I have no hasad, I have no reason to, I ain't hating on them, I'm just saying. In most cases, when they say that, what? They're from the worst of those who have hasad. I have no reason to envy Ilyas. Why would I be jealous of him? Right? People who talk like that. May Allah help us all. And there are many examples of that. Among the Salaf Salih, in which the teacher envied the student, or the elder envied the youngster, etc. Wallahu a'lam. Fadal, Habibi. Al-farqu bayna al-hazan wal-huzn. Linguistically, it's just a different way of saying it, in general. However, when it's mentioned with this vowel sound, with that vowel sound, a diacritical mark, that's an issue with regards to the Quran. Are there synonyms in the Quran? And what's the balagh between the fatha and the dhamma with the sukun? But in general, it's just a different way of saying it. Wallahu a'lam. Na'am akhi.
Two separate questions. So, regarding to the hadith of like punishment which you see for people in Medina, after that, if I was to live in Medina forever, would I have a greater chance of being received, like having a system of
There lies no doubt. Whoever man sabra ala shiddatiha wa la'wa'iha, or kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam, he was patient upon the hardship of Medina, the cold of Medina, the ups and downs of Medina. Kuntu lahu shafi'an yawm al-qiyamah. I will intercede for him on the day of judgment. So from the reasons of getting the Prophet ﷺ's blessed shafa'ah is, no doubt about that, and the other asbab as well. And of course, like anything else, our aqidah is a balanced aqidah, neither right nor left. Is there shafa'ah? No doubt. Why and how is there shafa'ah? Kitab and sunnah. The incorrect understandings of shafa'ah, the extremism, the this, the shirk, the bid'ah, la. But it doesn't mean that we deny what? And you find some people so fanatical, they will deny something that's in the Kitab and Sunnah. And accuse someone of saying it or believing it or looking for, oh, you're a Sufi, you're la, they second that. Further.
How important, or can you emphasize the importance of like learning history in light of what you were saying before, some explanations being found and some topics being covered by some of the sheikh, and why certain other like later books don't cover these things with regards to like the positions and the madahib and things like that. Studying history as a thing versus
well, they always say, right, if you don't know where you come from, you can't know where you're going, right?
No.
He who doesn't learn from the past is doomed to repeat it. History repeats itself, or those who say history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, etc., etc., etc. That's universal hikmah. You have to know the foundations of things, where they come from, and why and how they are what they are today. And a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstandings you'll be protected from just from having a basic understanding of history. Inside of Islam and outside of Islam. If you talk about Christianity, if you just looked at the basic history of what's called Christianity, there lies no doubt. You wouldn't know everything, all the answers, but a lot of misguidance you'll be protected from. Because you'll know, according to the non-Muslims, it's a historical fact that this thing during this date in this century was changed and made up and replaced and taken out. They themselves don't what? They don't deny it. It's history. It's a fact. Inside of Islam, Ashabuka anta, your friends. Oh, this is the correct aqidah of Islam. This is the aqidah of the majority of the Muslims, the Ash'ari, Maturidi. It's the balanced aqidah. It's not right, it's not left. It's kada, it's kada, it's kada, it's kada, it's kada. Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari rahimahullah was this, was that, Maturidi, etc., etc. Just read the what? History. You can read the history from non-Muslims. It's a proven fact of where and how that school and its methodology came from. How are you claiming that that's the original understanding when the people of history clearly say in this century, Imam Fulan merged these two schools together and morphed them together and combined them and came up with this conclusion pertaining to the unseen Iman, Kasb, Amal al-Ibad, Lalom Asma wa Sifat. How are you saying that, bro? Historically. Lalom Fulan, you don't have to talk about this Imam and that Imam. But if you go on Wikipedia, you'll find clear facts stating he learned here, he learned that, he was a part of this group, he was confused, he was this, and then he did what? Merged them together and said, this is the Orthodox Islam. How can that be? So history, no doubt about it, it can prevent you maybe sometimes from 7 out of 10 pieces and parts of misguidance just from reading history, let alone other elements. So it's crucial. And from that is the development of these different schools, their imams, their followers, their features, their pros, and their cons. Wallahu ta'ala. Further, our last question, further.
Last 2 questions.
Further.
So first one was the article somebody can go off like a salat quickly. So if somebody that was like working in Medina or had a business in Medina, would get more barakah in his earnings? That's the first. And the second is regarding Tawheed, is there any specific merits being buried in Medina and Tawheed?
Khairan. It lies no doubt that the hadith clearly states that there is barakah in Medina. And living in Medina, dying in Medina, protection from the Dajjal in Medina, so on and so forth. All of that is worded. We believe in that, according to Kitab and Sunnah. Wallahu a'lam. That's in brief. We'll stop here tonight. Sallallahu alaihi wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabiyina wa imamina Muhammad.